Hello and welcome to another episode of the Transportation Exchange podcast presented by Rush Truck Centers of Canada. I'm your host, Jason Cuddy, and joining us again today is Mr. James Menzies, editor from Truck News and Today's Trucking. Thanks for joining us again.
Always fun to be here, especially after we predicted everything that was going to happen, exactly right down to the point.
Exactly. So we're going to kind of review some of that. It is that time of year, already for the year-end review. We did one in May, kind of mid-year, so we'll touch base on that. But as usual, let's kind of dig through it, and we'll start with the market indicator, which is trailers.
Yeah, trailers is said to be the leading indicator when it comes to equipment demand, and we're not seeing that demand. There's a lot of reasons for that. There's the tariffs, which add a lot of, there's a lot of aluminum and steel that goes into a trailer.
Good point.
And then you just have that soft freight demand that hasn't picked up, and everyone's been waiting for that to happen. Not long ago, I was down at the American Trucking Association's Management Conference and Exhibition, which is a good place to go to sort of get the pulse of the fleets and the OEMs and what they're thinking about. And no one was overly optimistic that they're going to see trucking conditions improve over the next 6 months or so. If there's a recovery, it's not going to be based on freight demand. It's more likely to be based on capacity leaving the industry. But everyone's wondering what's taking so long in such a hard market for that capacity to leave. Yeah,
that's a good point. We're seeing that you're starting to see obviously some news, more so in the U.S., a little bit in Canada, about businesses that are kind of not making it through. And to your point, that will help bring the rates up as the capacity leaves the market, which then may start spurring some purchasing of new equipment, assuming that the rates can then support the capital cost of the equipment for sure.
Right, and it's much more palatable financially to start adding trailers before you add Class 8 trucks,
right.
Especially if you're uncertain, because it's a lower cost.
Yeah.
And both are needed, but trailers are something that you can pick up for a lot less money than a new Class 8 these days.
That's true, and they're not tied to any emission standards
right.
and stuff that are potentially coming down that way. And I guess tied to that, with the trailers, obviously the Class 8 and medium duty, what are you seeing and hearing about those two lines?
For Class 8 and medium duty, it's much the same. There's just so much. I think you said the word uncertainty, and there's so much uncertainty that's keeping fleets sitting on their hands. And there's multiple reasons for it. There's emissions regulations. What's going to happen? This was supposed to be a great year for you to be selling trucks.
100%.
Because with EPA 27 on the horizon, everyone was supposed to be buying trucks before those prices went up.
Correct.
Didn't happen. Now we don't even know if it'll happen. It probably will, but what will it look like?
Right.
Will it be changed? Will it be delayed? We don't know. So that pre-buy never happened, and fleets continue to wait for answers around emissions. At the same time, you've got what will the tariffs cost? Those rules are ever changing.
Yeah.
Now we know that they're going to be applied to full vehicles. Initially, it was just parts. So what's that going to look like, and what kind of an impact will that have on price? And I understand dealers don't want to be caught with these tariffed trucks. In case the tariffs go away, how do you recover that tariff surcharge that you paid the OEM?
Right.
Fleets feel the same. They don't want to go and add 10 trucks, pay a hefty tariff surcharge on it, and then those tariffs disappear and they've overpaid. Yeah. So what does everyone do? They sit and wait. They wait, and with a soft market, there's really not a whole lot of demand to go out and add new trucks, but what fleets are doing is they're extending life cycles, and that comes with a cost too that I think a lot of people overlook.
Yeah, that's a good point, and we're seeing out here. Obviously, the order intake is lower, for all the OEs, not just the ones we represent, but you're definitely seeing that soft market. And agreed, we all thought with the pre-buy, even Cummins was going to pull some engines forward a little bit quicker, and they've obviously changed their plans with the uncertainty with the EPA. But 27, there is still technology coming, but no one's loading up for this year like we thought they would. And it's really uncertainty.
And that technology's already been paid for by the OEMs.
Right.
I mean, they've been working on it for years. They've invested hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion or more, dollars into it. They've done their seasonal testing, their hot weather testing, their cold weather testing. They're going to want to recoup that investment one way. So I don't think those regulations will be completely eliminated, but what they look like by the time we hear, who knows? And here we are, weeks out from 2027.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. You talk about, obviously people are delaying the purchasing, which you totally understand and totally understandable within this market. The challenge is obviously if you're delaying the capital cost of the purchase, you still have maintenance repair costs, which don't necessarily decrease as the vehicles get older. Those parts are still impacted by tariffs, so there still is a cost to that. And then what we're seeing now with the newer technology, with the OEs we represent, but obviously everyone does, is the newer technology definitely seems to be getting better fuel economy. Mm-hmm. So there is almost a tipping point. You got to run some really thorough TCOs to really see if holding on to equipment even another year and a half makes sense, because between the fuel cost savings and some other savings, it may offset what you think is the spend, but the capital costs up front, which does hurt. But there could be a quicker return to your investment than if you kind of hold on to equipment for another year and a half.
Right, and I'm not sure all fleets think that through,
right.
On a sophisticated level like that. But if you get at a step with your traditional trade cycles, it's not so easy to get back into step either. So that's something to be considered as well.
Yeah, and the other concern too, obviously, if you hold on to stuff as the market keeps softening, you're going to have companies that kind of, go underwater, and you've got, fire sales and equipment stuff going to auction, so it reduces your potential, revenue of the trade-in values or the sale of the old equipment, which may be on the books for much higher than what the market's going to bear too. So there's a lot of factors that are very uncertain.
It seems like an easy solution: hang on to your equipment longer, sweat the asset, but really it comes with a lot of implications.
Yeah, and when we talk about uncertainty, obviously the biggest one is tariffs. As we talk here, going into 26, we have some line of sight to your point. They want to tariff equipment that's not made in the USA, but obviously there's nuances and asterisks to what that actually impacts and what it affects. So what are you hearing from the different between fleets and other OEs as far as how they're kind of managing through this?
OEs are trying to near source as much as they can, but there's only so much you can do. And you look at they're all great big global manufacturers with manufacturing and supplier base that's around the world.
Right.
I was at an event recently where one of the leaders at Cummins said it's not the engine, it's every little piece on the engine. It's every piece of metal that comes from places that maybe we didn't really pay a lot of attention to before, and now we have to try to bring some of that production to the United States. Right. When it comes to transmissions, at the same event, a speaker from Allison said, we don't even have the forging equipment in the U.S. that we need to make our transmissions here. Right. And it would take years to source that, secure it, bring it here, and get it up and running. So it's not like flipping a switch for these OEMs, and they're trying to figure it out as they go because the rules keep changing.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's the challenge with it, right? It's the tariffs are obviously designed to bring stuff back in house, but that's what you're saying. It can't just be done overnight. There's some little things that can be done, and obviously most of the OEs have probably one or two plants within the U.S. that they can then move stuff around to meet production needs for the U.S. versus Canada and into Mexico. So you can play with it to a certain extent, but it's a challenging, it's a juggle for everyone to figure out.
Absolutely. And at the same event, there was a trailer manufacturer who said even if I do bring production to the U.S., I still don't think I can get the workforce.
Right.
Unemployment's still fairly low there. The economy for now is hanging on. Yeah. And it's not simple to produce everything domestically within the borders of the United States.
No,
I think that lesson will be learned in time. But
well, it's a global supply chain for a reason, right? It's
exactly.
kind of we built up that way. And driving all of this uncertainty for the carriers obviously is rates. Rates still seem to be fairly depressed. What are you hearing from that world?
Yeah, we're in RFP season now, and they're starting to get some opportunities to bid, and what I'm hearing from the carriers is that fleets are still not in the driver's seat when it comes to rates. Right. Shippers are still taking advantage of the current market, and there's a lot of pressure under rates still because there's too much capacity, and shippers are willing to take advantage of that. Basically, the publicly traded fleets in the U.S., the big guys, were saying that they see reason for optimism in the second half of 2026, but not before then, based on what they're seeing. Some forward-looking shippers are beginning to look at locking in capacity because they know it can't stay like this forever. They know that it's a cyclical industry, and eventually the pricing pendulum is going to swing the other way.
Right.
And they all have short memories, but not so short that they don't remember what it was like after COVID.
Right, fair.
So, I think some of the smarter shippers will start to plan for the recovery, but we're not seeing it yet. And even the spot market it's still just it's steady, at least. It's not volatile.
True.
And there's freight to be hauled, but it's not growing, and the rates are still down in the dump. The consensus from Bob Costello, who's the chief economist at the American Trucking Associations, when he spoke at their conference, was that this will not be a demand-based recovery. It's going to be a capacity-based recovery, which is sad because that means there's going to be a lot of bankruptcies and a lot of people that leave the industry because they just can't make it.
Yeah, and you're seeing it, right? I mean, there was, I think, something in the news yesterday, within Canada, a couple carriers that are struggling. You saw a lot in the U.S., obviously. And I know there's been a lot of other, undertones with how carriers are set up and other things within the market that, are driving that. So some may welcome that change, some obviously don't. But at the end of the day, it's unfortunate because you are having carriers, go out of business. But it will then change the capacity demands, which hopefully then increases the rates and then drives back some certainty and some sort of stability back into the industry for sure. And
the market doesn't discriminate. There will be good carriers, well-run carriers, as well as poor-run carriers that are driven out of the market in these conditions.
Yeah, no, fair. And so, we talked about this last year. It's funny because you mentioned the forecast is kind of flat until the second half of next year, and then maybe a bit of a gradual rise. And I think we said that this time last year about this market that we're in now. And we it's been steady. I guess it's been soft for sure, but it's been steady through. There's been no real big peaks. There's been no pickup. As we're speaking now, nothing's really looking like it's going to jump through the end of the year. So
I was talking to a forecaster and I referred to the freight recession. He corrected me. He said, no, James, there's freight. It's not a freight recession. It's a rate recession.
Right.
Which is a different way to look at it, but I think it makes a lot of sense. And, the reason why there's a lot of this optimism coming from the big U.S. carriers about capacity leaving the market is because there's crackdown now on non-domiciled CDL holders.
Right.
And these are people that don't necessarily live in the state where they got their CDL. Some states were handing them out more liberally than others. Some of them are not even legal residents of the United States. And now there's a big enforcement drive underway to get these guys off the road. And we're hearing about, checkpoints in Arkansas and Illinois and other states. And in addition to that, they lapse after 2 years. So there's at least 200,000 of these licenses that are set to lapse over the next 2 years.
Gotcha.
And that might be the catalyst to get the capacity out of the market that will lead to stronger rates. And again, I think everyone would rather it be a market-based recovery where freight increases. Because, it's kind of a tragic story to watch unfold. These are all humans with their lives and livelihoods that are being lost. But at the same time, we probably never should have been in this situation in the first place with that many unqualified drivers on the road.
No, fair. And the challenge with it too in the U.S. is navigating, what you're seeing from a federal level, like you said there with the checkpoints, but then even certain states are kind of imposing or talking to impose statewide regulations with regards to, foreign drivers with CDL license, whether it's Canadian or Mexican potentially, right? Obviously there's asterisks to all this, but again, it goes back to this whole uncertainty as rates, and it's all, I think uncertainty is the biggest, navigator of all this.
Yeah, we talked last time about the English language proficiency requirements, which was another thought that there was a thought that could take a lot of capacity off the road. We haven't really seen that. And we haven't seen, and the Canadian fleets I've talked to haven't been overly affected by that. Some have had their drivers tested. I haven't heard of many that have had them taken out of service. It seems like most of that enforcement is happening in the southern states along the Mexican border.
Right.
And the out of service rate, even though it's supposed to be an automatic out of service, the out-of-service rate of those that are failing the English language proficiency exams is actually pretty low because a lot of those drivers are only allowed to haul into the border zone, exchange, drop the trailer, and go right back to Mexico, and they're not placing them out of service. So that's not having the huge impact on capacity that we thought it might.
Fair. And I guess the one thing we're still trying to gauge, and you mentioned on it earlier, was, is there a pre-buy for 27? Because now we are at the tipping point where, yes, with, some unknown EPA regulations, some things have been dialed back. But as you mentioned, the OEs have invested heavily into the 27 engines, and they're all going to be there for Jan 27 production. So, what do you hear there? Do people think maybe this will be the triggering event for a pre-buy?
It's funny because the OEMs aren't asking for this to be taken off the books.
Right.
They've already done the work. They've already spent the money. So who is the EPA trying to cater to here by casting so much uncertainty over it? It's not the OEMs. The OEMs want it to proceed. I think where there could be some leeway or some flexibility that the OEMs would like to see was the requirement around the extended warranty of the after-treatment system, because that was adding a lot of cost.
Right.
And if that can be loosened a little bit or done away with and they keep the existing warranty on after-treatment systems, then that will lessen the cost to the fleet and the end buyer. So there are benefits to the new technology, as there always are. I don't think there's going to be a huge step up in fuel economy this time around, but there should be some improvements in performance from what we've heard from the OEMs that have been doing the work. So we just need answers, and I think all the OEMs agree. We just tell us what we have to do, when we have to do it, because they're ready. They're ready, and they've made the investment. And, fleets are going to have to start buying equipment one way or the other.
Yeah. And I think when I look at it from our end, like the soft touch points are the ones you could easily kind of remove, like you said, right? The engines are the engines. They're all in. They've invested the R&D money. They want that to proceed because they put the investment in. The soft touches like the extended warranty coverage or even the quota amounts. Say you're running California, you need buy one EV for X amount credits for, internal combustion. So those are things you can just make go away.
Yeah.
You know, which is, and it doesn't impact the amount of research and development that's been done to the engines. But yeah, the engines are coming either way. But it would be nice just to have some certainty as to, you know, what is required, what is the mandate, and, you know, and what is the time frame for it.
Right. That regulation, EPA 27, again, industry isn't asking for that to be taken off the table. I think they were happy to see revisions and changes to GHG 3, and that brought with it some mandates to sell more EVs.
Right.
And as a result of that going away, we're seeing a lot less EV demand. And, you know, that was all the rage for the last few years. And here we are, you know, in certain applications, they continue to be used and they continue to work well. But
Yes.
I don't think we're going to see the wider spread pickup that we might have thought a couple years ago.
No, I think the early adapters are in,
Yeah.
right? And, you know, all the ones that want to take advantage of it have done so, and it's, you know, seen how it works. And I think everyone's still kind of sitting on the sidelines to see what the ROI looks like on that too, right? Because it's, you know, how long will the batteries last? What is the cost to replace them? What is the residual value of these vehicles when they hit the open market after their useful life within a fleet? And that's still all unknown, right? So I think everyone's just kind of hanging back and waiting. And obviously with all the EPA regulations, different guidelines, and, you know, incentives and credits kind of coming and going, everyone's, you know, I think for hire companies are definitely still sitting back and waiting, and, you know, let's see what happens with the first adopters and then go from there.
And I still haven't seen a Tesla semi on the road up here, have you?
No, I have not seen one yet.
Or are we supposed to be seeing 50,000 a year or so by now?
Yeah, I mean, you know, they're running the states. They do well for what they do, but it's, you know, I think the Class 8 is always still going to be, it's the infrastructure really, right? It's the ability to support the product outside of just like it's coming home every night. And I think that's why we've seen the early adopters who are, you know, the final mile carriers. I think those have been really successful, and those will make a lot of sense. You come home, you don't put a lot of miles, there's no range anxiety. They idle a lot, so you take a lot of wear and tear off an engine. So they're great fit for the EVs as far as what they do. You know, the Class 8 stuff, you know, I'm sure it has a purpose. We've seen them be successful in certain areas, but definitely the infrastructure is not at the same pace as where they're pushing to get the Class 8 stuff on the road.
Right. And, you know, I'm not going to write them off entirely, because how many times did the industry dip its toes in a natural gas before finding a product that actually works and suits the needs, which they seem to have right now in that 15-liter Cummins. So, you know, maybe they'll pull back, and maybe, again, something else will happen.
Right.
New government, who knows? And then we might hear, we
again.
might have round 2 of the EV explosion.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I guess based on that, I mean, we don't seem to ever get this dead on, but let's give it a shot. What are we thinking? We're looking like 26 going to be
second half.
Yeah,
that's a safe thing to say, and that's what everyone seems to be saying.
Yeah.
You know, no one's expecting a quick turnaround. So if you've made it this far, buckle in, stay buckled in, and you know, you're a survivor. This industry is so resilient.
Yes.
It can't stay like this forever. It really can't. And some things to look forward to. You mentioned the fact that there's going to be a big crackdown on certain drivers in the U.S. That's going to remove a lot of capacity from the roads. I heard someone say the other day it's going to be more than the impact of mandating ELDs.
Gotcha.
And that created a bit of a capacity crunch. Here in Canada, we just had a federal budget, our first under Mark Carney, and he committed a lot of money and had a lot to say about cracking down on driver rank, the misclassification of drivers.
Right.
And I think in Canada, a lot of fleets are going to wait and see. How much teeth is the enforcement going to have? What are the fines going to look like? But the fact that it's being addressed, I think, gives some hope that maybe some capacity will come out of Canada too, and it might be some of those companies that don't necessarily treat their drivers as they should. And that could be a good thing for the industry. It could clean up the industry. At the same time, it could put some pressure on rates. Right. And maybe if the government starts talking about this, maybe shippers will start to pay attention to who they use to haul the freight.
Yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, it's a kind of a wait and see, maybe the same as predictions last year. And, you know, to your point, this is a very, you know, resilient industry. It's very cyclical. Like, we've been through this. It goes down, it goes up, it goes down. That's, you know, it's constant. It's just the factors that cause the up and down are always different. But yeah, to your point, I think if you're in it and you're getting through, hang on. You know, there will be light in the tunnel. We just need to get the rates established, kind of get some market certainty in place, and then, you know, we should be good to go.
I think we've at the very least reached the floor. No one sees it getting worse, even if they don't see it getting better right away.
Good point. Yeah. So, well, we'll hang and see. We'll do this again in 6 months and see how accurate we're on that one.
Yeah. We got a perfect track record, right?
Exactly. Perfect. Well, thanks for doing this again with us. I appreciate
pleasure.
it.
It's always fun.
Yes. And that concludes today's episode. To catch past episodes, check out transportationexchangepodcast.ca. Until next time, thanks for watching.